Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts on another Saturday morning, and we have a new face here, and we are ready to dive in, and I'm excited. This is Loops. I met him last night. He is my favorite person I have met in the last 24 hours. He has a magical beard, and as we were doing like a sound check last night, 5 minutes turned into 1 hour of just awesome conversations. The more I learn about him, the more I like him, and more than that, I have a question. If someone said to you, your brain is the sexiest thing about you, how would you feel about that? Would you feel good about that one?
Well, you're assuming that no one's ever said that to me before, so, I'll just tell you how I felt. How about that?
I said it to him last week.
I mean, were you offended by that? Like, your brain is the sexiest thing about you.
No, not even a little. I mean, I hope that's the sexiest thing about me because the rest of me isn't really doing a whole lot. So, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. So,
yep.
I'm glad you find part of me sexy is the answer to that.
Right. So 2023 just started, and already I think we've had like some obnoxious number of cyber events. And when we were talking about the title for the stream, the original title was something like, a hacker's dilemma, dealing with the emotions. Because I find deep down, I don't know what, again, I've been on the pen testing side for like forever. And then I moved over to core of like chief innovation officer. But like when doing the pen testing, part of me, like there's this weird dichotomy that happens, which is you're getting paid to break into someone's network. And when you're doing that, your success or what your feeling of success comes is when you're successfully breaking in and you're successfully dumping their AD and you're successfully finding some exploit in their software. And on your side, you're like, oh, I win. And then on their side, someone else is losing and having a terrible day. Like ideally, you can't find a way in. I think that has kind of moved into this idea of first part of this year is when you see these massive exploits happen, part of me goes like, woohoo, like we're winning. And then it was like, wait, no, we're really not. We're really, really losing. Do you get that at all? Like, I don't know if that's just like a weird thing in my mind. Loops, what about you? Like, have you experienced that? Because you've been on the red team side, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, for various definitions of red team, yeah, anytime you're winning in cyber, you're kind of losing, right? And anytime you're losing, there's somebody who's winning. I don't think it's really about winning and losing anymore. Let's say this. It's kind of like, I've got a niece and nephew who just moved close to me in over on the East Coast. And, they talk about playing sports and all, and they reminded me that, it's all about how you play the game, right? And I think that couldn't be more true for cyber because really like every time something happens in cyber, someone's lost, someone's won. And it's someone different every time too.
Now, Gowrie, what are your thoughts on that? And then let's jump into some of the more recent news because I just find it just nuts that's already happened.
This is you already know what I'm going to say, which is I don't play CTF because I don't find it fun anymore. I don't find the competitive aspect of it fun anymore. So I'm kind of on the lines of Loops in that I don't like that it is seen as this competition against red versus blue kind of. But in what you were really trying to say is just like, if everything is hopelessly broken, aren't we just horrendously losing all the time? Like even if the red team, quote, wins, really that just means we're collectively losing, right?
Congratulations, you won. Oh, you won. You are the smartest idiot in the room. Still an idiot. Yeah. So what was you had gone off right before stream of like 5 different hacks that have happened. I'm curious to jump into some of them because some of them are just like so goofy.
Well, the first one's not really a hack. I mean, everyone's aware of the Southwest problems, right? The problems with Southwest Airlines. Well, Southwest Airlines has nothing on the FAA's NOTAM system going down. And so for people that living under people who are living under a rock, there's a NOTAM system. So this is the Twitter from the FAA's Twitter. They had an outage to their notice to air mission system. And basically my understanding of what the system is basically it tells you what's around the airport in general. So that's what lets them safely take off and land because they know, there's a 150-foot crane 12 miles from the airport, and they know to tell the airplanes don't fly at 150 feet, right? Well, there was an outage in that, and the FAA grounded all planes nationwide for like a couple of hours. And there was a ton of speculation as to what was going on. This was determined that a, quote, software glitch, specifically a damaged database file, caused the outage of the agency's NOTAM system. And this kind of goes into the realm of like legacy systems, right? The question I have is, how old is this system? Or how new is this system? Because it could be either of those, right? I believe NOTAM's really, really old.
I would.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine with so many systems. I mean, like when I was in that, we'll say that section of the government and doing my it was always amazing. Maybe like when I toured some of the buildings, you would expect where like it's space age, like lasers bouncing off the moon. And then you would come across like rooms where you're walking and you see Ethernet cables duct taped to the floor because no one has gotten approval to be able to like break the wall and put them in there. And you deal with some of those weird politics, which you wouldn't have to deal with elsewhere. So like it would not amaze me that these are old systems. More than that, most of these systems were always just like this smart grid. They were always air gapped. They were never meant to be connected to the internet, and now all of a sudden they are, and they were never kind of relocked away. So my guess would be it was a very old system. And
I was cruising Mastodon recently, and I saw there was I don't know who the source is on this, but they said something to the effect of like, go into the data center and look for the 486, like the beige 486 that's plugged in the corner that just got unplugged. Like, there's your problem. And it's hilarious because like I have actually seen exactly this in production in like a critical system before, an actual old 486 sitting in a corner of some old data center, and it was doing something important. Like, can't say what, but it was doing something important, and that was that was their system, that was their lifeline. There was no redundancy.
It's like the software equivalent of don't remove these comments, software will break.
Yeah, right.
I think that this one though is like, this one doesn't really surprise. Like, don't get me wrong, critical system and everything like that. This one just feels like common. This feels like, oh, that's so last week. Having a critical system go down, but it's not as interesting as, like, for instance, the Experian breach. Could you have that one pulled up?
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to say is the FAA did say that this was not the cause of a cyber, or there was no evidence of a cyber attack. So everyone was immediately freaking out and saying, this is a cyber attack. No, it was just, a critical system going down and no failover, which, that's about what we
baffles
expected.
me. How is there not, like, you'd think with a system like this, you'd have redundancy on top of redundancy on top of redundancy. And that is, I get why it can't happen and why it's not there, but oh my gosh, why have we not rebuilt that so there is actually that?
Not just a system like that, but an organization like that. This is the FAA. Like, their whole reason for existence is aviation safety, and this is the system for aviation safety. This is like, there's a runway out, don't land here. And yeah, no redundancy. Blows my mind.
Let's jump into the next one, because this one I do think is just utterly ridiculous. Here we go. I'll drop it on the screen here.
Hey, this isn't even the first time Experian got, quote, hacked, right? Like, that I'm aware of. Like, I think that they have been the subject of pretty massive hacks, and it makes sense. They're a juicy target, right? So the summary of this is basically Experian has an interface for us all to log in and go look at our credit reports. And in order to do that, normally you have to answer a bunch of multiple choice security questions, which are another flawed mechanism. But they had a way to bypass this if you knew the person's name, address, birthday, and social security number, which is like, you would think, oh, that's kind of a hard hack. You got to know someone's name and their associated social security number. But everyone's social security number has been leaked so many millions of times at this point that this is basically gross negligence, in my opinion. Like, the fact that you could bypass their incredibly weak security feature to get in the first place by just knowing data that's pretty readily available on the dark web, if you will.
But
Experian is not going to have a good year.
mind you, though, the vulnerability was not that, oh, you could guess these things. You could bypass these things entirely. You didn't even have to answer those questions. And this falls back to something we talked about earlier, which is, should you be able to be criminally liable for negligence on this level? Because we're not talking like, okay, someone again bounced the laser off the moon. As I understand it, and as I read how the attack works, it is legitimately going up to your address bar. There is a / private directory. And if you delete that and replace it with not an indirect object reference, but if you would replace it with just like the number of the report, you can just see anyone's report. This isn't on the level of, I had to search for days and weeks. This is on the level of, oh, I stumbled across this and oh my gosh, everyone's social security number, like everyone's social security reports is out there.
This is funny because this is literally, I mean, that type of, I actually found one of those vulnerabilities while I was in the Navy, right? It was one of like the health systems, and I saw a URL flash by and I went, what happens if I just add a, +1 to this ID number and somebody else's health information came up? These things happen in the wild and they're real. Right. And so like and this is something that Silk and I have discussed at length. I'm interested to get your input, Loops. Should a company be held liable for that level of vulnerability to the point of like gross negligence?
Criminally, not civilly, criminally.
Yeah. I mean, at least civilly, you should be able to sue them, right? I mean, I think everybody kind of agrees on that point. Like if a company loses your information, they're open to lawsuits. Yeah. Generally speaking, if they lose a lawsuit, that opens them up to potentially, criminal allegations and criminal prosecution. But, obviously, the standard preface, I'm not a lawyer. But also, I believe that, negligence is one of those things, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's your, if you're in charge of security or finances or personnel, negligence is the crime, right? The problem I have with that is that negligence is often very hard to prove. And so like you can make the laws for it. You could say like, yeah, we're going to hold these people criminally liable. But what is that actually going to result in? Like, who's going to be the first, fall guy? Who's going to be the one, getting prosecuted for the first time for it? It's going to have to be something just like really openly egregious. They're going to have like chat transcripts saying like, oh, I don't care about users, blah, blah, blah. I don't see it really happening. As somebody who works in security, like I don't want to feel like I'm at risk of that if I forget, to check one box or something and everything goes sideways. But yeah, in general, I think, for people who are being really egregious about it, who are saying like, we don't need security, just open up that S3 bucket and dump it in there. Like that's caused, years of this type of indirect object reference vulnerabilities. And I think that should be, if somebody does that stuff knowingly, then they should be held accountable civilly and criminally.
Yeah, and a piece of this too is like we're not talking like there's already precedent in other verticals, medical. You can get a doctor malpractice and all of that. The question is if you're dealing with a certain level of confidential data, does that open you up for this? Like, and I use this as an example. Is like this vulnerability could have been found by any DAST tool. Like every single DAST tool, the first thing it's going to do, that dynamic application security testing or tool, is it's going to find that parameter. It's going to start iterating through it, and that would be like it should get caught with automation. So there's definitely some sort of negligence that happened, but like, yikes! Like and this has been shown that people have gone to prison over this.
Well, I don't know that people have actually gone to prison over this because this conversation kind of started back in December when the Albanian government arrested some government workers and charged them with crimes for functionally not doing their job, right? So like in the military terms, we call this like abandoning your post, right? But these are folks that like their job was to just make sure that services were updated. And they just let services not be updated for 7 years. And we started getting into this discussion of, at what level does it become a crime to And the gray area is like, well, is this a system that got shuffled off in the corner and the only guy who knew about it left the company or left the service, and therefore, these other people that inherited didn't know? There's negligence there, but is it gross negligence? And is it, does it rise to the level of criminal? Is there intent, right? If these folks literally just collected a paycheck and did nothing that they were supposed to do, then maybe you could rise to the level of saying that there's criminal intent there. Where it gets to be interesting is and I think, Loops, you touched on this, is with this hack, or I guess with this vulnerability that was revealed, is it the level of like intentful gross negligence that someone didn't run a DAST tool against a pretty high profile service with people's financial informations, right? They're supposed to have pretty stringent security policies in place, and Silk loves talking about this. You have a security policy doesn't mean you adhere to it, right? But like,
Well,
yeah,
or,
I guess
or that
there's a
security policy
philosophy.
could be written in crayon on the back of a napkin. It's still a security policy you're following. It doesn't make it a good policy either.
Yeah.
I'm curious because like, while this vulnerability dealt with, maybe a DAS scan or things like that. If they were sued, they have to show damages. And historically, like I feel bad for anyone who had their identity theft or their identity stolen, like when it first happened, because we all know how that went. Is someone had their identity stolen, they started seeing credit card things come up, they call the FBI and be like, hey, my identity is stolen, and the person on the other end are like, what are you talking about? Your identity is? I'm talking to you right now. How could your identity be stolen? And there's no like policy or procedure for it. Now it's like, hey, my identity has been stolen. They're like, hold on, fill out form 32AB, send that back. We'll file it here. We'll send you this. Like, it's all automated. And if they are held liable, there's going to have to be some sort of damage assessed. With something like your identity being stolen, there's a fee for it. Unfortunately, it's like everyone will get $5. Like someone will get like some negligent amount, or like we'll sign you up for monitoring for a year for our service, which we provide, like some utterly ridiculous thing. Whereas something like LastPass, which was hacked again, like every single time it gets hacked, I add another character to my password. Now I have like a 32 character password. It's been hacked 7 times within the past couple years, like 7 times. Like, that is horrid. Now I get it. They're a juicy target. The question though is, there is, with the identity theft, $5. How do you articulate like the amount of damage your entire password vault would have and just completely wreak on your life? That's every password, and there's not really a great way of knowing like what it was. And they weren't really all that open about it. How do you assess damages on something like that? You're muted, by the way.
My bad. You get into this sometimes with telling people, go in, so this is the article for the LastPass hack, and it was millions of people, and it wasn't just passwords. It was billing address, email addresses, end user names, so like your real name, telephone numbers, things like that. So they're having a bad year too. But you get into this with password vaults being hacked, but also just how easy it is sometimes to get into these, we'll say, critical aggregators of information, people's Gmail accounts, right? Silk is notorious for having hacked millionaires. He loves that story. But he does that.
Also, by the way, he got offended when I called him a millionaire. He's like, multi-millionaire. He called me out, and he's like, it was multi-millionaire. I'm like, I'm sorry. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Continue on.
Yeah. But, and that quote hack was functionally just guessing his security questions on Gmail, right? Which at this point is like, you shouldn't use those anymore, which is even funnier, going back to the Experian, or was it Experian, or was it Experian? The Experian hack. Yeah, the Experian hack was just guessing people's security questions. You could do that anyway. And that's the way people get into other people's Gmail accounts. So if you just, public service announcement here, if you have those things enabled on your critical aggregator of information like Gmail or your email address, turn it off and use 2-factor. the
Yeah,
love of God
actually,
used to factor.
I'll flip back to that conversation, which was the way I got into his account, and there was a video on it. It was like a little bit cringy because it was like I redid the video based on feedback from someone who's not in the security industry, which was interesting. But like one of the so the piece of that is if you have a Gmail account which you signed up for like years and years ago, their original password reset mechanism, which was based on your like secret question, is still active on your account. Like it never manually kicked off. Even if you've opted into two-factor and phone number and you've opted into all of these things, that reset security question still can bypass all of it. And that is amazing to me. CryptoCat jumped into chat. If you haven't seen his videos, he is an amazing hacker, and I love his videos. Check him out. CryptoCat, thank you for jumping in. It's been a while. You asked about Loops, who is a new person. Has his first stream. Loops, I know I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give us a little bit of background? And I know us as hackers love talking about ourselves, so talk about yourself.
Yeah, no, I don't think 35 minutes is gonna be enough time. No, yeah. So my background, sure. Yeah, no, I'm like Gary. I'm a military vet, so I started out my career in the Air Force. I started out as many security people do in the IT field. So I was kind of the jack of all trades. This was like early 2000s time frame of we do everything on prem still. This is before the cloud. This is before lots of things. And so yeah, I got to really experience all the different pains of security in those kind of early years. I didn't get into what some would call cyber. I know we hate that word, right? But until cybery things, yeah, I didn't really get into that until I went to grad school for computer science and got into like vulnerability research and stuff. And so I ended up doing that for a few years after I left the Air Force. I got out and was a vulnerability researcher for a few years for a defense contractor. That's where I met Gowrie. We were call it cubicle mates. We worked in a little office we called the Pirates Den, and yeah, so
things
I've
got
also
weird
worked
for
in,
a few years, and
things got really weird.
and
I asked myself a lot of.
I was gonna say, and we just met last night, and in that 5 minutes we were supposed to spend like doing a sound check, an hour later we not only found like a kinship, but we also found out we both have a serious, I would say coffee addiction. We have a wonderful love for coffee, which I feel like everyone in this space should have. And if they don't, then they're dead to me. I'll leave it there.
Spent an inordinate amount of money and time and energy and thought on coffee. Yes, I'm actually certified in coffee roasting somehow. I don't do it professionally. It was just a thing I wanted to do, and there was a class for it, so I went and did it. So yeah, if you ever want some coffee roasting tips, I guess I'm a professional. I don't know. Yeah.
You're talking to some. I have a 5-pound roaster in my house. It's a beautiful thing.
Nice.
I have a room.
What do you have?
Dedicated to it. A North roaster, which I'm pretty happy with. Jumping back to I don't know something in IT. As many of these hacks have coming, the question actually here, there is more and more news. There's LastPass breach and all of those. Just as a general question, at what point have you embraced the dread that these things just happen, that these things are going to continue to happen? Have you just gone, okay, cool, everything's broken all the time forever, like there, or is this just like information where you go, okay, well, we have a job forever because these breaches will just continue to happen? Like, what's your thoughts on that? Embrace the dread. Gowrie, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts? I mean, my thoughts are I'm going to start a farm and delete computers and return to monkey. Like that, my thoughts on this. But yeah, no, I mean, we always joke that this is, for you, when the FAA systems went down, it was the worst day ever. For me, it was Tuesday. Right? Like this is just another day in the world of computing in general. Stuff breaks and then you go fix it, and it's not the end of the world until it is.
Now here's the question. Do you find yourself with competing emotions when it comes to like these massive hacks? Like do Do you have that little bit of like the Joker and Batman just kind of smiling as the world burns, going like, "Yep, that's what the industry is." Like for me, my uncle, I love him dearly. Family is a beautiful thing. I get emails from him almost consistently, like this new hack happened. Here's a new, like almost like a marketing expert. He's like, this new hack happened. Here's like 4 services you can buy to prevent this. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not buying. Not only am I not buying any of that, no one should be buying any of that ever. But it's like if you have already, but I feel like so much of this is for me, anytime I get one of these things, I do feel a little bit like the Joker of going like, yep, it's all burning, and that's okay because like that is part of the industry. Do you get those weird competing emotions?
And that's why we're sponsored by Garbage VPN. Garbage VPN, shit in, shit out. Yeah, Loops, you got
we were talking about. Yeah, I was gonna say, we were talking about that the other night. Like, there's certainly like this "we told you so" factor to all these things, where it's, you feel bad because you're like, man, there are some people who are really scrambling right now. Like, they didn't cause the problem, but they're cleaning it up, right? So I feel bad for those people. I feel truly, honestly, deeply bad for those people. At the time, it's like the people who are above them, the people who made these bad decisions, or were responsible for the inaction year over year. And here we are as the professionals saying, like, you guys need to fix this. You need to get that 486 off the floor and get something like redundant, something that's reliable up and running, because this is an important service. We kind of were able to sort of sit back as a community and go like, guys, we told you this was a problem. We told you so. So yeah, there's that part of me that's like the Schadenfreude, like, I'm happy for your pain because now this pain is public and maybe people will actually start doing things differently. But
like
I don't feel, yeah, I don't take any more pleasure in that pain than that fact.
Fair enough.
We told you to rewrite it all in Rust. Why didn't you rewrite it all in Rust?
Right.
Now, part of me goes also like, is this a cause of the industry right now? One of the topics we got into was Loops, you threw out this number of like, I don't know where you got it, but like 750,000 jobs available in cybersecurity. And then we have people who want to get into cybersecurity. And do you think that's part of this, where it's like anyone in cybersecurity at any of these companies are screaming for more money, more budget, more people, more help, because of this just onslaught of constant vulnerabilities coming out and constant things they need to defend against? Like, do you think that's part of it?
There's that sort of, empty space in the middle where you've got, the buy and the ask on each side, right? Where it's like, you've got, I think the number I saw was 700,000 openings. And I don't know if that's in the US or the world or what, but it's a lot of openings, to say the least. There's people know that they need security professionals. And so like, I have to assume that they have budget for it, but they need something really specific in these roles. And there's all these people who are trying to get into, cyber, and they're not able to. There's some, corner that they haven't been able to peel back. Is that part of the ongoing problems? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the companies are saying, we need these people, we need this expertise. Granted, more people is not always a solution to every problem. We know better than anyone, like, the worst way to destroy a project is add more people late in the game. But like, you need more people with creative instincts and, the understanding of the scale of some of these problems and the nature of some of these problems to get together and come up with better solutions. Because, whatever is happening right now for just so many organizations just isn't working. People talk a big game. They say, oh yeah, we're leaders in security, we're innovators. But then you look under the rug, you look behind the curtains, and it's a mess, right? Like, and that's every organization, that's government, that's, commercial. Everyone has problems. And I think staffing and, just creative solutions they're going to continue to be a problem. Department of Labor has projected shortages in the US for the next, I don't know, like decade. So clearly there's a problem. And I'm seeing some kind of comforting things lately. I know, I think it was Hack the Box got some funding to go.
A ton of funding, I thought it was.
Yeah. That's so, man, to me, that's just so heartening, because that is that's saying like cyber training is a real thing now, and people have kind of done it in nooks and crannies, but now it's going to be now it's like its own little corner of uh, of the market. Yep.
I oftentimes on the stream will harp on the military and in conversations as well in the idea that, when I was about 6 years in and I was thinking about getting out and all these things, and they started to train me to be an actual engineer, I decided I didn't want to be a sailor again. And then I went to college. And within like 6 months at college, I realized just how uneducated in the field of computers the average enlisted cybersecurity specialist is. But this is the kicker to that. It was like there's a lot of like, oh my God, it's a little bit of blind leading the blind. And I harp on them for that a little bit. But at the same time, they're basically one of the only organizations that'll take somebody working at a Dairy Queen and turn them into a cybersecurity specialist by investing years and years of training into them, and getting something out of it. And they do get something out of it. And so like that's kind of what Loops is saying is there's a lot of stuff missing in the middle where you could have somebody who's trained in software development or computer engineering, but there's this huge gap between that and effective cybersecurity specialists, whether you're building cybersecurity tools or you're reverse engineering things. And I often said this back at my last job: if you want, you're not going to go out and find these pre-trained individuals that will slot into the exact job that you want.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. If you do find them, you hit the lottery, and they're going to cost an absurd amount of money, right? There's this huge in between where you have to look at them and say, take any competent new grad and mold them into the engineer that you need, and recognize that it's going to take a year and a half to get that out. And it works, right? And so like this investment of going out and purchasing pre-built, perfectly molded engineers, unless you're the Facebooks or Meta or Google of the world, and you can throw $500,000 at someone's face, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, by the way, CryptoCat, who's pasting a link. Yeah, I turned on a security feature for my channel and it blocked a bunch of people. Other thing, Gator, welcome to the channel. By the way,
hey, Gator.
If you do love Gator is starting to posting it to his YouTube channel as well, and he should post it. Oh, he can't post it in chat. Look him up by his name. He's a beautiful person, and you should go follow him. Adding to this conversation, though, the part which is massively concerning to me, especially when it comes to, so historically, if you wanted to get into, let's say, offensive security or hacking or pen testing or whatever you want, red teaming, whatever you want to call it, historically, when I was a child, we didn't have hack the box. You maybe had hack this page way later on, but you're going into IRC, and it was an annoying community. And I'm going to say annoying community because you had most of the people you met when you tried to break into the community were all the idiots who were like 4 or 5 months ahead of you, who had just enough knowledge to think they knew a ton, but then would quickly shut you down because you turn into this like miser hoarder of secrets. And you're like, these are my secrets and this is my hacking tools, including Med USA and not Medusa, because some idiot will call it that for a good 6 years. Point being is, if they wouldn't share the information, and which makes it very difficult to get into the field. And then you get we'll call it the actual experts who love sharing this information and want to get people in the industry. And when I started, it was this weird hoarding of information. And we've hit this a little bit where I think a lot of people are hoarding it. So I love this fact that you have Hack the Box and you have Try Hack Me, and these awesome resources that anyone can go and learn. Here's what I actually take, and that may be an exception to, but this is the hardest part. There is a massive gap in how many, we need more pen testers, we need more OffSec. And companies can just hire tons of these people, and then because they have the services to sell them. The biggest problem with it is it doesn't work like most other things in the world of, it's very similar to maybe a home inspection, but in the sense of, you go, if I take the cruddiest tester who's never tested anything in their lives, someone who has no idea what they're doing. My daughter, I sit my daughter down, put her in front of my computer and say, test this website. She's not going to find anything. I will write the report and say, we didn't find anything. And that company gets a report, an excellent report, saying, guess what? You are 100% secure. There's not a single vulnerability. It is a fundamental flaw in how I think we do things. I think there's fixes for it. But that is terrifying when we have this many jobs that need to get filled and this many people want to get into the industry will hit that I know just enough to get by and I think I know a lot, but I haven't like realized how much there is to know. And you now have like what I think we're feeling the aftershocks of that with the FAA getting hacked, with heck, it's gotten so bad between Experian, FAA, and everything like that, where hackers are the offensive security, like black hats, are starting to feel bad because in giving the money back. That's the funniest one to me, is that they felt bad because they hacked a hospital and the hospital wasn't prepared for it, and they gave the money back or gave the hack back. This is like I think that's the problem, and I think that's how we solve it. That's the solution to everything. I mean, I don't know. Before we jump onto the money giving back, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so you talked about two things that really interested me. The first one was the breaking in part where we've kind of gone back and forth between there's these groups of the hoarding all the knowledge, and then now there's kind of times when we go to like we're sharing all the knowledge. I don't think there's a time component to it. I think there's just always kind of been those groups, and you just kind of luck out if you find those groups. For me, starting out, one of the things like I didn't know like Linux install parties were a thing until much later. But like in the late 1900s, I remember back in high school, and I was at a LAN party. And we're just like playing Quake 2 or whatever, and then we were like, I was like, I'm gonna put Linux on my computer, and so it became a Linux install party. And there was this guy that I looked up to. I was like a sophomore or whatever at the time, and he was a senior, and he was helping me install like Red Hat 5 or something. And it was like the coolest thing in the world to me because I was getting to learn from this dude who knew more than I did, and I was just surprised to be able to sort of like get that knowledge, to get his time. And I think that we need to come back. We need to like get something like that going again. I don't know what it would be nowadays. Like installing Linux is trivial, but there's something that somebody's like looking at and they're saying like, I just need to like sit next to somebody and learn how to do this the first time, and then I can like that's the first corner that I can peel back and start learning. We need to get more of that. And the second thing you talked about was like getting putting your kid at the wheel for going and doing a pen test. Okay, maybe not a pen test, but I'll tell you like an experience I had was I was doing an engagement once with a handful of experienced people and a handful of brand new people. They hadn't been like certified at anything yet, and they were sitting and watching, and I saw them kind of getting bored, and they were trying to pay attention to what was going on, but I finally realized like I was like I have a system that's read only. They can't interact with anything. They can go in and start looking at some logs. We had like Moloch running. And so this brand new guy who hadn't been to training yet or anything, I got him on Moloch, and he started digging around through like DNS logs, and he started popping up really interesting things. And like some of them turned out to be findings. And I was like, holy crap, new people, it's that, curiosity that's the difference. It's that, passion for wanting to go and just, tinker, prod, learn. These are valuable experiences. And, I think that, we shouldn't underestimate the power of people who haven't really gotten the bona fide educational experience, or the they haven't gotten the cert or whatever. Like everybody's got value to add, and they've got experiences and perspectives that we're just not even really thinking of until they blow our minds. So
and we talk about this all. Yeah, we talk about this all the time too. Even if you do have the bona fides, the degree or the certification, to be honest, like those things are only worth so much. It gives you a vocabulary, and oftentimes certification gives you some level of base information about how to use tools or operate in the space. Like I often say the biggest thing you get from a degree is the vocabulary to have a conversation with somebody else. Doesn't mean that you have a computer science degree. It doesn't mean you're going to be a good software developer, right? But it gives you the ability to talk about problems at a higher level. That's basically what I'm saying is, but even if even if you get those certifications, it doesn't necessarily tell you anything about how effective this person will be. It just really tells you what conversations you can have with them. So it's really hard to determine, and that's why like interviewing is a nightmare in this industry, right? I often say that I have a master's degree in computer science. I have 15 plus years in the background, and every time I go into an interview, it's like I have to prove I'm not an absolute mouth breather, right? Like that's why I like interviewing in this industry, and then on top of that, in the security realm, like yes, I've used IDA, I've used all these tools. I can talk like, and you throw me like the basic little reverse engineering challenge. It can feel kind of insulting at sometimes, and so it kind of puts people off in that sense as well. And so there's a lot of cultural issues as well.
This is why you get a CISP, because that shows that you have all the knowledge you need for everything in this industry.
Forever.
Yeah,
100%.
everyone needs to know that the height of the fence outside a skiff needs to be 9 feet if it has barbed wire, or 10 feet if it doesn't. Like the money shams that exist within certifications just kind of makes my blood boil.
Can we go back momentarily to Loops being a young hacker and installing probably Linux 1.8 or something? I'm just imagining him up there like this as his first terminal comes up.
No, that's actually me. Yeah. That was when I got my first shell. Yep.
I think what is interesting though, it's like you mentioned learning from other people, and I think like the massive bursts in knowledge that I've gotten, like which I got early, wasn't from an IRC channel, wasn't from online, or it wasn't from a book or something like that. It was from individuals. It was individuals like, and it wasn't even individuals who were, we'll say, in my vertical. Like a roommate of mine was Bunny, who runs the hardware hacking, or ran it forever at DEF CON, the hardware hacking village. And him helped me start satiating that curiosity. Like Poncho, who reverse engineered Steam Vac Engine and stuff like that, being able to learn from him doing that, like those were my big bursts in knowledge. I also think, like, yes, video games, so at a core, at least of anyone in our generation, like learning how to do networking on, like, oh goodness, like GameSpy Arcade to hook an Xbox playing Halo, like pretty much you were creating a VPN, but you had no idea how to do it. So you're like bumbling your way through network connections just to be able to play Halo with other people, and then find out that you unscrew at the connection because one had to be a server and one didn't have to be a server, and you do standby hacking. And like, I do think it is video gaming was the gateway drug. Lastly,
and then your parents come downstairs and they're like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, we're just tunneling." And they're like, "You're gonna get arrested. What are you doing?"
That reminds me of a classic Onion article. Parents discover kids doing PHP. Like, classic.
I think the one which I do have to say I have a level of embarrassment on is when you were talking about Quake. I think it might have been Quake. It might have been Unreal Tournament, but the oh goodness, the orgasmic voice the person had when you had like the multi-kill, and it would do that, and you'd be like, this, it would come over the speakers, and you're like, I can only imagine what my parents must have been like. This is why we got a good quality pair of headphones, so you didn't have to hear that. You remember that game? I don't know which one it was.
I mean, it was probably Halo, right?
No, it wasn't Halo.
Right.
It was the no, that one was Killtacular. Like this was the Ultra Kill was what it was, but it was the best map that has ever been created or ever will be created for PvP, where it was the two towers on like kind of like this rock and space type of thing. Like, oh, such a good game. So I just remember PvPing. Oh, so I miss PvP. I really do. I haven't played a video game in a while.
I thought the height of PvP was there's a very short-lived game called Daikatana, and it didn't last very long, but in the early days of it, and like it was almost like they released it at the beta phase, like many like all the best games, right? And you had these like mines that you could set up, and you could set them up right next to the spawn points, and there was no grace period when you respawned. So like funny thing to do was set up mines at every single spawn point and then kill somebody once, and it was like a cascading, like you would die 11 times every time you got killed. Horrible. Worst game ever, but so fun.
Gator helped me out here. It was Unreal Tournament 2003, and it was
Oh, nice.
godlike. Yeah, that was it was such a good announcer. I want to spin back to something I said earlier, which was the hackers felt so bad they gave the money back. Gator, not Gator. Goodness, I'm looking at his chat. Gowry, I have your screen. I'm throwing up here.
Yeah, so this was an article. When was this? Oh, January 1st. It was the first. Yeah, because I sent this over. I sent I sent this over to Silk the moment I saw it because I was like, "Oh, what a way to start the year!" A ransomware gang apologizes and gives sick kids hospital a free decryptor for its ransomware. The Lockbit ransomware gang has released a free decryptor for the hospital for sick kids, or Sick Kids is the name of the organization, saying one of its members violated rules by attacking the healthcare organization. This isn't the, I mean, this is interesting, but the most interesting part is really the fact that they talk about this organization, this Lockbit gang, in terms of as if it were a company, because they released a statement that said, "We formally apologize for the attack on sick kids and give back the decryptor for free. The partner who attacked this hospital violated our rules, is blocked, and is no longer in our affiliate program." Right? Like this is
Like,
the group
What are you
releasing
selling
it.
makeup? Like, come on, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like this is what we're talking about. It used to be like we often like kind of skirt around talking about certain, we'll say, business endeavors that exist within cybersecurity, people who find vulnerabilities and sell them, what used to be on the black market, but now it's pretty much just the market. Like there's now an active market for vulnerabilities. It's real, it's out in the open at this point. And here we have what would have been like a dark web organization coming out and making like publicity statements about how they're doing good. Like, oh, it's okay. We didn't mean to steal from this hospital. We're giving it all back. We're sorry about the problem. We're going to go continue stealing from bad corporations and your little old grandma, right?
The kicker with this though is like this is not unusual. Think about not Lock Crypt, whatever one of the earlier ones was. They had an entire help desk dedicated around helping people with their decryptor. Like you could go to their website, hit the live chat support option, and get support on their decryptor that you purchased with Bitcoin. Like it makes sense in some ways because then more people continue to pay because they know if they pay, they get support on it. Like, but my gosh, is it just utterly ridiculous when but again, they run like organizations. They have internal help desk to help their teams. They had full affiliate programs with so many of these where if you build so they build the ransomware, they don't build the dropper, the thing that actually like puts it on the system and executes it. So you build your own dropper, you buy their ransomware, they handle all the transactions, all the Bitcoin washing, all of that, and you drop their malware and you get it's part of the affiliate program. Like it is incredible to me that these things have just continued growing as they are, but at the same time, it's like, technology has grown and it allows these opportunities to exist.
It's funny. We keep saying this, like, they operate like businesses. They operate like companies. They are businesses, from their standpoint, it's making them money. They're not going to, prison in the majority of cases. Like every once in a while one gets turned up, but like they're doing what's making them money and they're getting away with it. It is business. And, I think asserting the level of professionalism, that is their attempt to sort of, prevent themselves from, being gone after, carte blanche. Like they don't want to be attacked by law enforcement. And so they're trying to present the best possible light to assert themselves as a somehow legitimate business. Right. But, something else I wanted to talk about though is, I've been reading, and I don't know if this is true or not. So this is a little bit of a kind of an e-break, and like there's some hearsay here, but like my understanding of the situation with this hospital is that the organization, the hospital IT organization, had backups, and they had already restored their services by the time that the group came out and issued their apologies. So I don't know what the truth is here. I don't know. I haven't read anything, you know, ground truth about this, but were they trying to put that up as like a, after the fact, like, oh, just kidding, we really meant to do this, or were they truly sorry and they actually, they gave up the revenue there for the good of mankind? I kind of don't
No,
believe that aspect. I think it's more
it's
likely that the hospital got its services back up.
no, and for sure, like the takeaway from this is not like, oh, look at how kind this ransomware organization is. No, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no. It's more the absurdity of a ransomware organization having what amounts to a PR department running
yeah,
these campaigns because of exactly what you said, where these organizations don't want they don't want the global government hammer coming down on them. They're operating
yeah,
out of places that have basically, we'll think of like Russia, right? Russia turns a blind eye to a bunch of hackers as long as they hack other countries.
right,
Right? Don't screw around internally. Do whatever you want outside the borders, and we'll just kind of reap some of the back end benefits out of the chaos that you have. Stuff like that. Or I'm singling out Russia, but there's a bunch of places in Southeast Asia that run like this, and they don't want global governments to then turn around and like get sanctioned because they're allowing these organizations to continue operating, and they're starting to attack places like children's hospitals. So this 100%, this is like a PR operation to prevent,
yeah,
say like, oh, we're bad, but we're not that bad. Like
yeah.
we you know what I mean?
So I'll
If
pull
you're
this
gonna hand
back to
out
another one. Oh, go on, and then I'll
Oh,
pull it
as is,
back.
yeah. It's if they're going to hand out red notices, you want to be at the very end of that list, right? Like you want to be low on the list of Interpol targets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Squiddy has me cracking up. They go, software is software. Yeah, most of these organizations probably have a better QA process than most enterprises do, where they're like, hey, we need the QA testing. We need this. I'm going to laugh my butt off. And, well, actually, you know what? They would have to. They probably do have, we'll call it, oh, goodness, I want to say secure DevOps, anti-security DevOps, where they run their malware through all the different security tools to make sure it's not detected and it's fully undetected.
Oh yeah.
So here's
Oh, yeah.
here's the topic I kind of want to pull. We're going to pull all the things back to back and find the nugget of truth, the toad of truth that sits at the end of the rainbow, because there always is one. No, okay, but here's the piece. We have this we covered this idea that like security education is becoming more and more available. We know there's a gap in the industry. We know so much of this malware is becoming easier to write. There was just an article with using Chat GPT to help write new forms of malware. Here's the
Why
piece
not?
I'm unsure about, which is we want to make education more and more and more available. On the other side of things, there is a living off the land ransomware kit sitting on GitHub right now. Legitimately, it's an entire ransomware kit built in PowerShell, which is a living off the land one, meaning like it just uses native Windows stuff to run. At what point are we like, we're giving the ammunition out there? We're maybe not to make. Let's not go down that analogy route. We're giving all the tools to create malicious things. We're giving the education out there, and then I almost feel at times like you have places like YouTube where it goes, you know what? Hold on, that's an actual hacking video, and pulls down like an education video. I know CryptoCat has had videos taken down where it's clearly an education video, but then there's been times where it's like they want to stop video, like live hacking, where someone's like actually doing something illegal in a video, whether it's hacking, whether it's anything. But there is a question to be had there is, are we just making things worse by pushing all the information out there, pushing living off the land ransomware, giving these more tools, and then telling, we'll say like people who are, we talked about video game hacking and things like that. Like that's how a lot of people learn how to get into this industry. Are we just weaponizing, let's say like the people getting into this industry with all of this education and then say, okay, cool, be good citizens out on the internet, because most of what you do out on the internet, you can't be held liable for?
Yeah. This is the forbidden knowledge question. Like, to what extent should the knowledge be considered forbidden, right? And if you think about it, like back in the 90s, it was much more forbidden, right? Like,
Mhm.
people, you did nice things, or you were that. This is where black hat and a white hat came from, even back in the 80s. Like, that whole thing. There was a certain amount of, unless you went off and read the manuals and figured it out by yourself, you weren't really allowed in the community because it was tight-lipped. There was The laws were enforced very selectively because they still didn't really understand how to deal with this. And now we're in the age where, like, every major university has a baby's first buffer overflow class, right? Where they teach you how
Mhm.
to pop a shell. Like, just about every major university will teach you some amount of vulnerability and reverse engineering if you get into the right classes. And you're really asking, like, are we setting people up to just go be criminals by handing them a bunch of potentially dangerous knowledge? And what amount of that knowledge should be considered, quote, forbidden? And I don't have an answer to that, to be honest. Like, my standpoint is, you got to teach it in order to get the defensive
Yeah.
people, on the good side working. So you can't restrict it, right? We got to
Yep.
just do it. But to the level that we allow, for example, an entire, like, rootkit or ransomware to just live on GitHub. Like, I think distributing tools to that caliber is, we could probably find that in at being a gray area where, like, someone could make a law against that, and I'm not sure that I would agree with it entirely, but I certainly understand it.
Mhm.
Personally, man, first of all, I don't think there's such thing as forbidden knowledge. Certainly, there is such thing as classified knowledge, and that's that should be protected. But forbidden knowledge, if it's out there, then why would we tie a hand behind our own backs, right? Like, as a
Well,
defender, as somebody who's
Loops
written
is
signatures, who's written detections, I'm happy to see that stuff out there. Like, if I got source, if I can go like see the actual tool and how it's operating, and I can write a detection for it, awesome. Because it's going to be used either way. Like, it's going to get
yeah,
shared
fair.
somehow through some
but
avenue, and I'm going to
I'll
have to defend against it one way or the other. If
I'll
it's in the
throw
hands
this
Hey,
of
let
out
me
there though.
somebody
Like,
or
oh,
a
go on.
pro, yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say,
Loops
like, whoever's hands it ends up in is kind of immaterial to me. I want to be able to defend against it and have the best leg up in that fight.
Loops is the guy going through the Garden of Eden, just grabbing apples off of every tree and taking a bite.
Yeah, yeah, I like apples.
Well,
Nom nom nom.
I'll throw it out this way. So I have my big red button here, which I used to have set up where I just hit it and it just hack the planet. But point being is, I have a big red button out here. If I put this in the middle of like a busy street and said, "Hey, anyone who hits this, you will get $1,000," but someone on the other side of the world dies, I don't think many people would hit it. I have enough faith in humanity to know that, yeah, some idiot will actually hit it. But most people are not going to come up and hit the button because they have some level of awareness. If I say the same question is, if you come up and hit the button and someone's files get encrypted, but you get $1,000 every time you hit it, people would be fighting over hitting the button. That is the part where I think is I lose a little bit of faith in humanity because I believe no one's going to hit it to kill someone. But I do think people would be fighting over it. If you could steal $1,000 from someone random online, but and all that happens is they encrypt their files because everyone can justify it. Well, they should have had backups. They should have done this. Am I crazy, or do you agree with me that people would be hitting the button?
I literally don't know, but I think we need to have a stream to test this out. And I think you just need to go find a really busy intersection and put it out there and have that sign next to it that says $1,000 and someone gets hit with ransomware.
I need
And we'll
I need
just
the thousand
count them up.
dollars. That would actually be a really fun game where you got to sign
Find a
up
sponsor.
and you opted in. You were allowed to push the button, but you had to opt yourself into it. Oh, here we go. Gallery has an image for us. I'm gonna put it in. I mean, I get nervous because I can't see these images before I put them up.
Yeah, no, this is just one of those old comics. Every time you push this button, your life shortens by 1 year. Somebody just comes along and just like, ah. No.
So I mean,
I think I think you're slightly naive in thinking that someone won't push the kill someone button,
Right.
somebody out there is definitely going to run up and smack it as many possible times as they can, even if it was only $1. Right? Like that's how little faith I have in
Or no
humanity.
money at all. They're just trying to call your bluff.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and again,
exactly.
but I think like as a general statement, we'll say the general population would hit the button for ransomware. They wouldn't
Yeah.
generally speaking. It's way easier to hit the $1,000 for ransomware. Again, I guess it's kind of an unfair question because most people would probably put those death in a category different from like losing your files. I don't know, maybe I know some of us probably would actually put those differently. But point being is like I don't know, it is an interesting time to be alive when it comes to I do feel like the number of hacks is massively increasing. We have this massive gap. I don't think it's a recipe for success. Where we are right now, I think it's going to be years before we start we'll say like figuring out cybersecurity. We are not catching up with the speed of technology that's growing. Using the example like Chat GPT, we haven't even scratched the surface of like the implications on cybersecurity with a tool like that for things like how it's pulling its data model, how it's pulling its data. All of a sudden, what happens when it starts ripping into private information that it shouldn't have? And now those questions can be asked. Like, it's a fascinating time right now. With that, Gowrie, what do you got for us?
Well, it's 2023. My kitchen is presently in the process of being ripped up. I don't have a kitchen right now. My house is chaos. So 2023 is just the year of chaos for me, and I'm just going to embrace the chaos. I'm just glad to be done with the holiday chaos and back to streaming again.
Loops, I'm so glad you decided to join us. What do you got for
I'm so
us?
glad you invited me, man. This is, for 2023 for me is, I think more of this. I just, I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to kind of get out there and just sort of, speak my unfiltered truth. So this has been really cool. Thanks for bringing me on. Other than that, I think I got to get back into coffee roasting, man. You got to tell me what you're interested in, and we got to have some, PvP roasting. All right.
I'm good with that. Ethiopian
All right.
Yirgacheffe, the season
Ooh,
ended.
yeah.
They're coming on in. They're getting shipped in. That is my absolute favorite.
All
With
right.
that,
I'll get some greens.
so much to learn, so much going on in the industry. Thank you for joining us on our hold on. What's going on here?
No, that was just
Completely. I have a false ending with that. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sticking around, and thank you for giving us a little bit of your Saturday morning. With that, thanks for watching, and hack on.